Right, councillors, we'll get back underway. So back down to the team at the end of the table there. Thanks, Peter and Derek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a brief overview of just how we go about training our staff. Our council employs a competency level recognition system. Competency level 1, CL1, is where our staff are, I'm going to use the word compelled, because they are. That when they come into the organisation brand new, we require them to attend 4 hours of training, which introduces them to the coordinated incident management system and about how WRC acquits itself in times of emergency and how WRC supports a civil defence response. From that, Oh, beg your pardon. Sorry, thank you. And then from there, so this is where we do get a bit concerned. We've, as of February this year, 47% of our staff have achieved competency level 1. Now, there's a lot of people in this building who've been here for a number of years, and we may not have captured their training record as such, but even so, it's still a relatively poor showing. It should be 100% of our staff. That's what our other authorities in our region strive for. That's the agreement between us and them, with the coordinating executive group, which is the executive group for our civil defence people, that 100% of our staff will at least be trained to this level. Does it need to be in the employment? It is. It is.
Robbie?
If it is, why is it not complied then?
So it's more of a function of that when staff do start with us, they do the training. But yeah, as Director said, we've got staff who have been with us for a number of years who are in place before the training was offered.
And
so that's where the gap is.
But it's in their contract as well?
So what's in the
employment contract
is to fulfil a role to support civil defence. So this training enables the staff to
begin to.
Is that only ICM staff?
No.
The whole organisation.
Does that target come to the finance? What committee does that come to? The compliance on that? I can't remember.
So the long-term plan measure that we use is for level 2 training.
Pardon?
The target that we measure that's in the long-term plan relates to level 2 training, and so that's what gets reported to finance and performance. So we'll move on to that shortly.
I do think Stu Brown brings us a report too, so I'm sure it's been across his civil defence front at the lower level, potentially.
Have a look. I know that we get some stats about it every month, but I'm not sure that we report that through to yourselves.
I think a report should come to Risk and Insurance or someone to saying that we're well below if all other regional councils are trying to get to 100% and we're stuck at, what was it?
47.
Yeah, so that needs to come to somewhere. It's reported on what the bottom line is.
That was my point earlier, yeah.
But it comes down to what it is that we want reported, is the capability of the organisation to respond. And so what is management doing about driving that level up? That's what I'm more interested in. So, you know, if there's a need for the organisation to be prepared, which there is, and 100% is the accepted level and goal, then what is council, the CE, doing about getting there?
Well, you can't lift level to C2 if you haven't got enough people at C1. So that's the other issue.
Back to you, Derek.
And then once you've and you do have to complete competency level 1, because that's actually recognised nationally in the Takatu CDEM training system. So you need that record of learning before you're allowed to progress to the intermediate or competency level 2 training. So WRC has a service level agreement, as do all the other authorities in our region, with the GMO, that 25% of our total number of staff will be trained to competency level 2, which is the intermediate courses. That means they can assist in triage and incident management teams, and they can meet National Emergency Management Agency's minimum requirement for working in an EOC. So you can see how now we're not just doing this in isolation, we're doing this at a national level and making sure we're meeting national standards. So now, as of February 2026, 22% of our staff have achieved at least CL2, but we've actually got about 144 of the required more or less 150 have actually been trained. So we're just about at the right level for meeting our service level agreement. But it's the EMO's view that actually is way too low. We need far more people trained in that space now, as we keep finding out on every event. And then once you've completed competency level 2, we then start looking and encouraging those who are capable of doing it to actually be trained to competency level 3. And this is where they're trained in a specific function inside the coordinated incident management system, such as intelligence, logistics, planning, or multiple functions. And then we also have another course available to them. Again, these courses are all offered through NEMA and locally, that we can train our staff to lead a function, because that's what we really need. We really need some people. We think we need at least 30. Sometimes George and I think we need 60. That's but at least 30, and that's governed by the number of key positions in an IMT, and if you go 3 deep on each position. Right now we've got 12, so 2 of them are sitting here. And our enemy around this, of course, is again BAU. Staff churn is actually becoming an enemy. It's sometimes we can barely keep up.
I have a quick question, if that's all right. I think I asked something along the lines of this a couple of months ago somewhere else, but what about in partner organisations, larger corporates? Just thinking Fonterra, I used to work there. Some of our staff go to those organisations, but may still have the training, right? And could
Correct.
keep that up.
And the credentials follow them, because the credential gained is personalised to you.
So could there be a way that we can figure out how to draw upon such, this is for the getting to 60 perhaps,
Oh, right. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, the thought of, yeah, but they're in process. I just wondered whether we could look wider at times obviously want to fix the original issue first in our organisation. I just wonder if incidents are happening more and etc. We need to look into that.
At a civil defence level, that's an appropriate way, in my view.
I think that's where it came up actually.
For a WRC only an emergency,
Makes sense.
I'd say no, it's not good for us, because you kind of got to know how this organisation works,
Yep.
what we do, and
No, that makes
what our
perfect
objectives
sense.
are.
Thank you.
Moving on to what we sort of see happening in the future. Emergency Management Bill, the second reading has now gone through, and we expect the new Emergency Management Bill will be enacted later this year, and that will replace the Civil Defence and Emergency Management Act. So the focus continues on the 4 Rs in that there, which is reduction, readiness, response, and recovery. Some say there's now a 5th R that we speak about informally, which is resilience, building resilience in our communities. Heavier underlining in the new bill about the importance of Māori participation in all phases of emergency management, the criticality of our lifelines. Interestingly, WRC, through George, myself and Greg, we all pitched for recognising that stop banks, flood pumps and bits and pieces should be incorporated into that, and they've elected to not include that. But WRC certainly does regard that as critical infrastructure, and we still connect in a lifeline utilities group and forum, particularly during events, to make sure that we've got good access to information and we can pass on any risks that we see emerging. I've said before, the government minister, Mark Mitchell, he's been pretty active and been seeking out assurances and taking a real active interest in events. We have noticed NEMA have been turning up regularly now at events. Sometimes they turn up about 5 hours after the EOC has closed its doors and everybody's gone home, but they still turn up. And of course, the proposal under the new reforms to establish combined territorial boards, that's going to be an interesting space, particularly for this group of people. and how we acquit ourselves going forward. I personally don't see it changing or departing significantly from what we do already, but then there'll just be a different way of, I suppose, different lenses at this type of table.
Mr. Chairman, sorry.
Yeah, so
Just to follow on to that, it just shows you how important maraes are as well, you know, in emergency management, because even the events that happened around Otaronga, the marae was at the forefront of, and plus they've got a certain amount of infrastructure and facilities to cater for large amounts in small communities. So it's really, really important to align, I think, a lot of communication with those to make sure that they are resourced as well, because they can be, you know, the centre of that community and providing what they need in these events.
Agreed. Like marae are ready to go like that. So there has been a significant positive acknowledgement of marae capability and capacity, and that's been evidenced over the last few events up and down the country where marae are standing up preemptively. And even as recently as last week, the minister came out and said he will pay the bills. Even though they didn't have to be used, he'll still pay the bills. So that's starting to send a signal that that we appreciate and acknowledge the significant cost involved in just getting ready, even though you might not be used. I suppose this is probably more of a Derek Hartley view on your role as a councillor in emergency management. But community leadership is the game that we're all involved with here, all of us collectively, and that's in peacetime and in emergency times. And the best way to make hay while the sun shines is when there's nothing going on. So remembering that reduction in readiness is 50% of emergency management. Reassurance to our ratepayers and communities. Internally, we have teams of dedicated staff inside WRC who have clearly demonstrated their commitment to doing the best they possibly can, sometimes on the smell of an oily rag. That's Gabrielle, Cyclone Hale, the January 15, 16, 18, and now the February events of this year. We've got a lot of staff engaged and they're working really hard. We are trained and resourced overall. Be wrong of me, but we could do better. There are physically existing operational plans drawn up to address foreseeable and predictable events. And I'm talking things now about like cyber attacks, solar storms, extraordinary contamination, say in the lower Waikato, things like that. We've thought about all those sorts of things, and we have a very clear idea of what we're going to do. Marine oil spill space, we're well prepared there as to where we establish staging areas and points of operation. Strategic governance versus the operational management, i.e. you people versus Greg and the ELT. SIMS, I can assure you, SIMS will design and deliver the operational response. That works good. But emergency management does rely heavily on organisational oversight and making sure that we've got aligned visions of where we're all heading to and how we're going to go about it. The values we place on that, I think, is really important. And making sure that we've got the right strategies that give rise to having the right resources. And it's very important that we do actually reflect the community expectations. We shouldn't just go off and do what we think is the most important thing. Is this the best we can do in terms of ratepayer expectations, resources, staff and facilities, aligning with central government's intentions, capability and capacity, apart from the fact that Derek Hartley needs to go to school and learn how to spell the word and. It will never be perfect, but I say again, we just got to continually strive to improve. I've just quick summary, what WCR does well. We have adopted an emergency response framework and we've implemented it. We do have structured training and ways of working aligned to national best practice. We have well-tested flood response processes and practices. We have great connections with our other response agencies and our partner stakeholders. It's a small group of passionate and dedicated people working around the clock to achieve the above, but it's also a point of weakness. And, but we do need to expand that pool. Need to focus on ensuring our emergency management response roles are recognised as everyone being WRC staff, business as usual, that they could be called upon to help out. We've got to keep focusing on continuing to plug the gaps and reduce our reliance on just a few people carrying the burden of responding. We need to prioritise training and exercising, and that includes understanding and removing barriers to increased and ongoing participation. Going to an exercise once a year is probably not the most helpful thing. You need to be an exercise maybe a couple of times a year and a drill or two in the middle. We need to increase the number of people trained, exercised and readily available, and that they feel competent and confident to lead response functions. One of the things that came out of the North Island severe weather events reports from Jerry Mataparai and others was there was optimism bias was referred to. It means that we got through it, so things are probably going to be okay in the future, or it'll stop raining tomorrow, but it doesn't stop for another 3 days. We need to make sure that we don't fall into that trap, because that will cause us to lose focus on the importance of lifting our emergency management capability. We need to continue to improve the tools to supply timely, accurate intel to response teams and communities. That's particularly around flood modelling resources was my thinking around that. As I said before, we have some clever people in the building who can work things out really quickly, but they do sometimes need supercomputers to pair them to give that information during peacetime. We need to have plans in place to establish dedicated response facilities, because we could lose this building and we need to be able to go somewhere else pretty quickly. We have got well over 600 staff now that we need to communicate with if and when something goes wrong. We need to continue to embed the emergency response framework throughout WRC, while also enabling the deprioritisation of business as usual to support the responses. What I'm trying to say there is, if we embed the emergency response framework, there has to be some connection that tells line managers how to take away the pain of the BAU. So the staff member says, I'll go and help in the emergency space, is not feeling they're going to come back to an avalanche or stacked up work when they get back to the office a week later. And that, I'm sure you're all saying, is that.
Cool. We've obviously got a round of questions before you escape the room. So Gary Raymer.
Yeah, thank you for that. I suppose I look at how this matches in with stuff like infrastructure. You know, we talk about in recent weeks our infrastructure deficit, and so a lot of the response is because of failure of infrastructure, and so there's an issue there. So the real point that I want to ask you about: do you think, with the changing environment, that you are forever chasing your tail? So, you know, we keep ramping up, but the wave just keeps moving in front of you, because you look at the amount of emergency, state of emergency days we've had already this year compared to other years. And so every time we scale up, you know, with the changing climate and things like that, and infrastructure failure, you're never actually going to get ahead of the wave.
Two interesting questions there, Councillor. Are we forever chasing our tail? I think that just goes with the territory of being in emergency management. The police or the fire people, they would say it's always going to be there in front of you, and you will never have enough staff, people, resource and time to deal with everything that comes your way. In terms of WRC's infrastructure, what we own, stop banks, floodgates and pumps, and those other sort of defence type things that we operate. I think better informed Greg on this, but anecdotally, we haven't sustained great damage in many places. We've come out okay. Utahi with state highways and district council local roads, they've come out horribly. All the landslips and bits and pieces like that. Not that I want to minimise what's happened to them, but I think we've come out too bad over recent events.
I've got a speaking order, guys, if you can turn your mics off, because I think Peter wants a comment as well. Yeah, Greg.
No, so certainly Gabrielle, hail and recent events, it's primarily been catchment damage that we've seen. Our schemes have performed well, but it's probably fair to say they haven't been tested to their limits as well. You know, we haven't had the big flows coming through that, for example, we saw in the Hawke's Bay situation where those schemes seem to got overwhelmed by the high flows coming through. So there's something we need to be mindful of. As you say, Derek, it's all about avoiding the optimism bias as well. One day it will be for us.
So I suppose I was thinking more not of WRC infrastructure, but I am thinking about national infrastructure. So, I can give you an example, like the truck in Taupo, so that's fine, it's not fine, it's not good, but, if our infrastructure, if we had a 4-lane highway going from Auckland to Wellington, that would never have happened, so there's actually really big infrastructure projects, so, you mentioned roading, Greg, which is critical because, when that fails, it impacts what happens here. And it's just one example, but there's plenty of examples we can use. So it's not your infrastructure, but a national infrastructure crisis, basically causing new problem.
Peter, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to that, I think that probably sits with or comes into the recovery phase. And then rather than just building like for like, do we need to look at future-proofing it and things like that? So that will sit with those individual councils or areas. If it's our assets, then that's probably a WRC thing we look at. So that's probably where that lens comes across to future-proof, if that helps.
Just to follow on from Gary, Mr. Chairman, and that's why I agree that it should be the 5 Rs. Resilience has to come into it now. It's huge. And that, even the central government, I don't know whether they made the comment because they've got significant roads in the thing, but we've got to look after our existing roads as well, build resilience on those, which will make a huge difference.
Yeah, thanks. Robbie. There's one round left and that's it. Right, Jen.
It was just, you had mentioned a couple of times about having a dedicated office, and needing to have a plan for that. Have you got any plans for that? Or can you help me understand what that kind of looks like? Where are you up to and what are you thinking?
Have we got a dedicated emergency operations centre?
We should have one day.
I think that'd be my wish list.
And what does that look like?
It'd be a room, maybe about the size,
Okay.
full of whiteboards. All the computers just sitting there waiting to be sat at and get going, so that we can immediately activate an INT. Yeah. Security and confidentiality are other things that do actually come across our horizon. Especially like we're dealing with the marine oil spill space. Sometimes we're dealing with people's names, phone numbers, what they tell us has happened, and it can be a bit tricky having visitors to the building or other staff unwittingly, and I underline that, unwittingly picking up that information and transmitting it, and then it can cause us. Some of it could be sub judice.
And it's mainly, what are your main barriers to getting that, I suppose? Is it money or is it lack of space available?
So the team has challenged me in this space. We do have other options. As I said, when we first came to this building, we acknowledged that we do have the GEC facility across the road. And that has some benefits because it is IL4 as well, which means it's set up to be quite a resilient location. I think the challenge with that is that we could be competing for that space. My challenge to the team, though, is we do have quite a big and agile space in this building, and whether or not we could put some plans in place to utilise that space in a better way to get ready. Probably doesn't meet the definition of having an EOC that's ready to go. It would require some pre-thinking and some pre-planning, maybe some pre-deployment of some equipment. But yeah, that's an area that we're working through options at the moment.
Keith.
Thank you for your presentation.
Can you kick your mic on, Keith? We've got people online. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. For me, it's very insightful and it's evolved a lot since I was involved in ICM. All of us have in front of us the local body reform challenge, and we need to get our heads around what's best for our region. And as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, well, you had the slide up there, the the three super spiders or whatever they were. And even if we evolve to say a couple of CCOs and three CTBs and that sort of thing, we actually need a centralized coordination from what you're saying and what I'm seeing. So are you evolving some thinking that you can feed into us what would work into the future?
So if you're talking about like a civil defence response, I think that's still going to be in a good place after this new bill is enacted, will still be okay. If you're talking about how we coordinate at a WRC level with other agencies, we'll just have to think carefully about how we go about that.
The government's
Microphone, Keith.
government's intimating that won't be a WRC. So that's what I'm just putting in front of you. So how do you help us manage that thinking?
Yeah, and I think to consider is roles and responsibilities, because so we form up our function here based on what we currently have. You know, that could change in the future. So it's a key question that I don't think anyone can answer right now. Carefully consider it, because the responsibilities that we carry aren't going to go away. The community's still going to have its expectations, regardless of what form we take in the future.
Yep, thanks, Greg. Gary Maguire.
Derek, I'm well aware that we're governors, we're not frontliners, but would it be beneficial for councillors to do that same training as what the staff do, or have the ability to do it if they want to, so that they're more in touch with what's going on within?
Unequivocal, yes, huge benefit. And then you'd understand exactly what we're looking at and how we're doing stuff.
Yeah, I'll put my hand up for that one,
That'd be
please.
great, thank you. I'll send the invites out. We offer classroom tuition in this building pretty much every month.
And
So CL1 is delivered in this building by
Yep.
George or myself.
and that's how long? 4 hours? Or
4
something?
hours.
4
yeah,
hours. And
4
then,
hours, yeah. If you've already done 2 hours of listening to me, you can do it probably another 2.
And CL2 is
So 2 days of training across the road at the group management office,
3.
and 2 days over there.
Yeah. and
Yeah.
CL
CL3, it's a series of 1-day courses. Probably 3 would be the preferable number. Yeah. All catered, if that helps. That's how we sell it to our staff.
Better lunch than ours.
Mike, did
Well, on that, so the staff.
no, Mike, thank you.
Sorry, so the staff get time off, you know, because obviously you've got members right through the organisation, they get time off to do that. They don't have to do it in their own time.
Correct.
Yeah.
They do it during company time. Yep.
Robbie,
No, what was not going to say.
I don't care.
If it's about that, I want to hear.
Oh,
No, my comment was we need to be careful that we don't cross the line. Knowing,
yes,
being knowledgeable is different to actually putting your spoken when it's not wanted.
thank you. Yep.
I
Fair point.
I just wanted to hear that first before. Yeah.
You want some more
My
time to think about it?
question would be the capabilities of when we're building new offices, and is this enough of this finding now going into those new offices like at Warianga and other areas, because they'll be sub offices of what you're trying to do, and like the isolation of that office during a major weather event. Are you having enough input into the capabilities of that new office that we're building there?
Yep. I've certainly spoken to our property and facilities here and to the local staff up there to address that particular thing, so that because we acknowledge that Watianga particularly often gets cut off.
Yeah.
So
I'd be fully supportive of having a more contained area for yourselves to be in this office, to have a more response unit. Because then if it's that, you can always say, we can use it for other things, but bang, we hit the line and you guys are all out, you're down the other end of the office and you get into what you want to do. So I don't really think that changes the structure of this building much, but just you get your own designated area.
There's obviously
think-
costs involved in
Yeah,
that.
as long as
Come-
that's it, yeah,
come
but
to us
it's
as a business
exactly.
case.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
I understand, but I'd be
Yeah.
fully supportive of that. That's all I'm just saying.
yeah. Last
Yeah,
comment,
so
Noel.
on that, so can I just have clarity when you came to us 3 years ago or whatever, there was support for having resources in Taupo. Now, Michaela said something about some sort of resource at Marais. I just want to understand and maybe clarify whether we get feedback later, is what is in Taupo? What would be the best practice to have in Taupo so that the time gap, because there's helicopters are not always available or can fly, etc. So what is the resource that we need there? Because we can get to coasts from here generally, but what is it that we need in Taupo and what is the cost? Or have you got sufficient resource in Taupo now?
I actually think it would be good to get a briefing for yourselves from, I think it was Patrick, wasn't it, that Brent mentioned earlier? Was it Patrick or?
Wayne Reid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wayne.
Wayne's developed the plan around
Yeah,
that.
because Taupo's interesting because it's got a real mixture of roles and responsibilities, including the DIA on the lake. And I think what you've got to remember as well is that our equipment can be used, but our equipment is also deployed primarily for marine oil spill response purposes. And so we do need to be mindful of where we put it to satisfy that function. I think Brent did mention earlier that there was some consideration of pre-deployment of gear around Lake Taupo. So I think it'd be good to get Wayne to give you a full briefing on what that looks like.
It's just that if we need to address it, let's address it. But if it's addressed, well, that's a non-event.
Right, we'll wind it up there. So thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been a really informative workshop from your piece, and I think councillors will go away with a lot greater understanding in that space on how we actually work, how we train, and how we deploy. So thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for your engagement, people. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'll just get Jordan to wind up with the karakia.
Unihe mai te uru tapanui. Kia wātea, kia māma, te nākau, tinana te hininaro, I te ara takatū, ki rā I ronga, I whakari aka ki ronga, ki teina, humi e hui e, tariki e.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, councillors. Enjoy the rest of your day.